On the 5th anniversary of the conflict, Rageh Omah returns to reveal the Iraq War by numbers.
Rageh Omah has sent us this report.
Our correspondent Rageh Omah is there tonight.
I'm returning to the city I reported from at the beginning of the Iraq War.
The very heart of Baghdad. It's raining now, it's literally raining mud.
In 2003,
Soldiers are fighting.
I was a fresh-faced correspondent full of ambition and fear.
This is what shock and awe looked like as it tore into Iraq's capital. But just think of those ordinary Iraqis living near these targets.
"5 years on, I want to find the ordinary Iraqis who were my friends back then. Everyone knew war would bring tragedy, but could anyone have predicted that a country could unravel so drastically? The years I spent here from 1997 onwards left me with a lasting affection for Iraqis and their country. But what's it like now? Since the war began, we've been bombarded by statistics. I want to hear the human stories behind the numbers. In 2003, the Palestine Hotel was home for me and dozens of colleagues. Today, it's deserted. It was from the hotel roof that I filed my first reports of the war, witnessing the land invasion as American troops advanced alongside the Tigris River. They met little resistance, and time was clearly up for Iraq's feared and hated dictator.
American armor is moving at will across whole swathes of Baghdad. People have come out welcoming them, holding up V signs. This is an image taking place across the whole of the Iraqi capital today.
The US tanks converged on Firdous Square where Saddam's statue stood. One person stood out from the crowd that day, the man with the hammer, symbolizing the Iraqis' rage against decades of dictatorship and their relief that it was now over. Kadem al-Jabouri had been a weightlifter representing Iraq at a national level, but he'd fallen out with Saddam's sons over a business deal and was sentenced to 9 years in Abu Ghraib prison. Revenge came on April the 9th, 2003.
I began to hit without even thinking about it. The lads from the neighborhood helped me. First just 50 or 60, then 100, and 150. The numbers grew. They were watching my back because more and more secret police and Saddam's commandos were coming into the square. They saw me, but the guys and all the journalists were shielding me. Then the Americans arrived, and the tanks came into Firdous Square.
I too was there on that memorable day, as excited as any onlooker.
5 years of hatred and rage as they jump up on the statue, trouncing it with anything that can stop. They're taking their shoes off.
In the beginning, everyone was happy to have got rid of a tyrant and his oppressive regime that had destroyed the Iraqi people, made them slaves and imprisoned or murdered them.
Everyone knew history had been made that day, and everyone wanted their own memento, including me. Today, a nondescript piece of modern art has taken the place of Saddam's statue. But what's replaced his rule? Democracy, America and Britain will argue. Lawlessness, many Iraqis will tell you.
When we had elections and the government started taking shape, the militias started killing. Things got worse and I began to change my mind. It was far worse than the 2 previous years of occupation. While Saddam was a killer, a criminal, he did give us security and opportunities for business and work. Now I don't know whether to feel happy or sad.
A short while later, I was on a lower roof of the Palestine Hotel, preparing to file a report. As I did so, a French television crew were filming this tank.
When American tanks opened fire and hit this balcony, I lost a friend, Ukrainian cameraman Taras Porchusk.
We tried desperately to get medical help for our colleagues. But in these series of attacks, several journalists have been killed and wounded.
It's very strange and eerie being back in this room 5 years after finding Taras Porchusk dead on this very spot. He'd been filming the American tank on the Jumhuriyet Bridge, which then fired on him. There was pandemonium and blood everywhere, and I remember thinking to myself that this was the worst day for journalists covering the Iraq war, but none of us could have foreseen how many other journalists would come to die in the 5 years after that point, the vast majority of them Iraqi journalists. Another friend staying at the Palestine survived the shelling, and he's been reporting from the front line ever since.
It's been a very long time. You look just
Falah Khaybar is an award-winning news photographer.
Come and sit down. It's really good to see you, Falah.
5 years. 5 years.
A long time.
Before the war, life was easy and safe. We had a home and a car and a settled life, and most of all, safety. Now it's gone. There's no doubt that life is harder, because every day you run the risk of being killed.
Iraq's become so dangerous for Westerners that our newspapers and TV stations have to rely on locals like Falah to provide the photographs and footage they need. But they face danger from all sides.
When there's an attack against US troops, you can't move around. You don't know who your enemy is anymore. That's why, as a cameraman or journalist, you've always got this element of fear. Even the Americans arrest us and confiscate the photos on our discs. What I've seen is that they're destroying the country. There's no agenda, no plan that you can see. There's looting everywhere, and life has been destroyed.
Strong views, but from a man who's witnessed the events of the last 5 years at first hand. Falah's photographs provide us with poignant, sometimes harrowing images of a people still experiencing violence and fear every day. Many of the casualties are women and children. It's their stories I want to hear next. Baghdad's Green Zone was once Saddam's seat of power. Now it's the base for the new Iraqi government. It is nearly 6 square miles ringed by concrete walls and checkpoints, all protected by thousands of private security guards. I'm trying to meet up with a few old friends, and they live in this part of Baghdad, which is called the Red Zone. And it's called the Red Zone because it's different from the Green Zone where I am, and that's where the American embassy and most of the Westerners in Baghdad live. The Green Zone is disconnected from the real Baghdad, a place I could travel freely around before the war. Today, the city is far more dangerous, and there are few places we can film outside the car. And those places feel strangely empty because so many residents have fled to try and find safety. Walls and razor wire are everywhere, and they're not only here to keep the insurgents and coalition troops apart, they're also here to separate Sunni and Shia Muslims. In Saddam's day, religious and tribal differences were suppressed under his dictatorship. Amidst the lawlessness of Iraq now, sectarian loyalties and divisions have fueled the violence between warring groups vying for power. The city has changed unimaginably. These side streets used to be a hive of activity backing onto Sa'doun Street in Baghdad's commercial center. But recently, it's been the scene of horrific car bombs and suicide attacks. Even the guy running the tea shop has moved his business away from Sa'doun Street. And like most Iraqis you meet, he doesn't want his face shown for fear of reprisals.